Welcome to the Faith Focus podcast, where we explore the depth and richness of the Catholic faith. My name is Daniela, and together we'll dive into the timeless teachings, vibrant traditions, and everyday miracles that bring us closer to God. And if you're finding value in our conversations, please take a moment to like and subscribe. Your support helps us reach more hearts and minds. So there's something that I often hear, especially from Christians of other denominations, and they'll say, Catholicism is just too hard. It's too hard to be a Catholic. I hear that over and over and over again. And I'm not surprised to hear that from other Christian denominations, because those denominations primarily got started because they found Catholicism hard, and they started removing rules or removing practices and to create one that is more secular in a way. And we'll get into that a little more as we continue the discussion. But, is Catholicism hard? Let's maybe look at that. Maybe it is. Let's talk about it. And I would say that it is, right? To be a really good practicing Catholic. And I mean, there's a lot of what I would call milk and cookie Catholics that will go to church twice a year, if that. I'm not really counting that kind of Catholicism, right? Or that you only go to church on Sundays, maybe as the most. A few prayers before bed and you're good to go, right? That's not the kind of Catholicism I'm talking about. I'm talking about when you are living Catholicism to its fullest. So you're not just saying a morning Our Father, you're getting a rosary in every day. You go to adoration. You don't just go to church on Sunday. Maybe you'll attend extra masses throughout the year. So I'm talking when you're really living your Catholic, you're doing novenas. You've got, your sacraments that you're trying to get as many in as you can, as often as possible. You're utilizing, for example, if you are the head of the household, a father, you're utilizing your power to actually bless your wife and kids every day. So it's beyond just a theoretical believing, but you're actually living out your faith the way it was intended in its fullness. That is a highly disciplined practice. That isn't easy. And there's so many layers and there's so many options available to you in terms of what you can include in your daily Catholic practice and the way you live. And if you start to pack that all in, that can be almost oppressive at times, right? So it can be a really heavy path to walk, especially if you're coming from a place that never had worship in their life to that intensity. So Catholics aren't Catholics on Sundays, right? If you're really living the faith, it is walking with you all day long. And I know that my day is broken up several times a day with moments of prayer, contemplation, or doing something that is related to the church, God, glorifying God, even if it's in media, but God's on my mind throughout the day, not just an hour on Sundays. So that does require discipline. And the deeper I go into the faith, the more of the catechism I'm learning, the more it's taking space in my life. But it's not just Catholics that have, a strict path to walk, right? If you look at other religions like Judaism, they have over 600 rules that they follow under Judaism. And yet you don't normally hear people say, well, Judaism is hard. No, right? Those 600 rules benefit you and they help structure your life in a way that keeps your life balanced and healthy and safe. And so they don't look at those as rules that are limiting me. In Judaism, they are looking at these are rules to help me live the absolute best and happiest life possible. So Catholicism is very similar to that in the sense that we're just different stuff that we employ to get to the, hopefully, a place that pleases God. And if you think Catholicism and Judaism, you'd say, well, I think Judaism is hard too. Well, sure, but try living under Sharia law. That's hard, especially if you're a woman, right? So religious life in general is hard. It doesn't matter what religion you choose, right? They all come with their restrictions and their guidelines and their traditions. And all of those guidelines and traditions are all meant to do the same thing. And that is to keep you safe healthy and whole in a very troubled world. And you know that in life, if you take religion out of it and you take God out of the conversation, you know that even if you are living a fully secular life, it requires a huge amount of discipline to become successful in anything, whether it's a profession or a passion. If you want to take that to a place of success, it requires a huge amount of discipline. And you also have to admit that life is full of easy pitfalls. So if you're not on top of your housework for a while, or you're neglecting things in your business or in your personal life, maybe in your lifestyle, the way you're living your life, it's a really easy, slippery slide to problems. If you don't get a hold of your eating, right, you will suffer obesity and then all the health complications that come with obesity. If you don't get a hold on your alcohol consumption, you can very quickly go from being just a heavy drinker to a full-blown alcoholic. It's a slippery slope. And that is even without looking at things religiously, just in life. It is so easy for a year to run away from you. I meant to do all these things this year, and it's already, summer, fall, winter, and another year's gone, and I never did my things. This happens all the time. And what religion allows you to do, because you will have a religious liturgical year, right? It's broken up into different sections. Your daily practice of religion, which is a lot of contemplation, a lot of self-awareness, examination of conscience. When you start those practices daily, and then you mix that with a liturgical year, that does not happen to you. Because you will know as soon as you grab that dessert, you're not going to forget that you're on a spiritual path and that maybe you need to be a bit more disciplined, right? And how many times do I have to do something that I don't want to do, but I know that I have to, and I otherwise could easily talk myself out of it, which, by the way, is a form of demonic attack when you are talked out of in your own head things that are good for you to do, and they will rationalize it. You deserve a break. You deserve that ice cream. You deserve to play hooky from work today and no one's going to know. No one's going to know. That's a demonic presence that's distracting you from what you need to do, because it knows that eventually that cumulative effect of things you've neglected are going to cause some kind of trouble for you. Anxiety, because you're late on things, you get in trouble at work, whatever. And all that conflict, that anxiety, that trouble, those consequences, they feed off the negative energy of that. But in the moment, you don't see that. So a religious life will keep that from happening. You are not going to be tempted by the devil while you're praying the rosary. You know what I mean? So if you start your morning in prayer and you break up the day with a little bit of prayer, you're constantly resetting yourself. So that should something happen that throws you off the path, let's say, in the morning, by noon, you've reset yourself, as opposed to you letting a couple of days go by or a week go by, being in a really negative place or neglectful, and then the snowball effect of that occurring. So the constant examination of conscience will let you know that, hey, I didn't give it my all at work today. Hey, I've been slacking off at home. I've been kind of mean to my husband. Maybe I want to dial that back a little bit. Where's that coming from? That irritability, what's happening there? And that is what a life of faith will do for you. And that constant self-awareness means that you're constantly watching how you are in relation to your world to say, you know what, I eat too much. I notice every time I hang out with so-and-so, all we ever do is gossip, negative things about people. I don't feel good after that. But when I hang out with this other person, wow, we do good things. And every time we get together, something good happens, or we do something good for someone. That makes me feel good. If you're not constantly watching for that sort of thing, you will unconsciously start to develop bad patterns with bad people and maybe neglect opportunities to, encourage growth and friendship among someone that maybe would be better for you. So these are all things that religious life helps you keep track of. So if you're focused on the rules of religion, you're going to avoid a lot of things in life that are potential pitfalls. I had a friend who's very anti-Catholic, and he discovered that his son had been reading the Bible behind his back and was wearing a crucifix under his shirt. And when he found out, he was angry. You would think from my friend's reaction, you would think that he caught his son doing drugs or robbing old ladies. Like, it was that huge of an explosive, angry reaction, which he then regretted. He recognized that maybe wasn't the best way to go, and that he has a lot of stuff that he needs to process internally. But when he brought this to my attention, he didn't know that I had returned to the church at this point. So, he thought he was preaching to the choir and that I would be on side. And I'm like, buddy, of all the things you could get mad at your son for, getting mad that he's exploring Catholicism isn't it. Like, that's not, be grateful. Of all the things your kid could have fallen into, be grateful it was the arms of the church. Better that he join a gang? Like, would you rather that? Or join a cult or something dangerous, or join a group of drug addicts that go around breaking and entering? Like, there's so many more things that kid could have fallen into. Be grateful that it was the Bible. Be grateful, and this is what religious life protects you from. If you have a religious kid, or if you are religious, there are certain things that you can pretty much assume you're not going to fall into if you're living your faith in its fullness. That's the big caveat. You can't just say, I'm Catholic and that spares me from temptation, or I'm Catholic so nothing bad's ever going to. No. But being Catholic, when you're really living Catholicism, will protect you from certain things, will give you perspective that maybe being too secular won't, right? And it will keep you pointed in the right direction at all times. Now, what about Catholic versus other Christian denominations? And I certainly don't want to be disrespectful of other denominations. Not everybody has what it takes to live a full Catholic life, and I certainly wouldn't be in judgment of anybody that doesn't. Maybe you just weren't called to, right? So it's not for me to really judge where someone is on their spiritual path, because I certainly had many, many, many years where I strayed about as far as you can get from religious life. Now, one thing that I love about Catholicism that I feel is lacking in other religions is mysticism. Mysticism is something that is quite unique to our practice. And we have so many practices within the Catholic faith that will encourage your connection to the mystical if you really allow yourself to go deep into it. Fasting is fantastic for that. So fasting on a regular basis. I've even got, my husband has fallen in love with fasting and he's atheist. So imagine that. So fasting is a fantastic discipline to get into. That brings up mystical things if you know how to do it right. Certain prayers, novenas, your rosaries, adoration. These are things that are missing from other Christian denominations that have even taken the sacrifice out of the Eucharist and have turned it into a cute little symbol as opposed to, the center of our life like it is in Catholic faith. So for me, when I'm looking at other Christian denominations, each single one of them is a reduction of the original that it came from. Because every Christian denomination, all of it came from Catholicism. The Bible they are all using as the center of their life was given to them by Catholicism. So it's all a watered down version of Catholicism that was made easier or more secular so that it's less mystic. And you know what the result of that was? Swaths of people leaving Christianity for New Age practices because it gave them the mysticism back. That's why you see so many people moving to New Age, in my opinion. And even New Age, for that matter, many of their beliefs and practices are merely appropriations of things that we do in Catholicism. So, for example, you will not often hear New Agers talk about angels, but they all have guides that are talking to them, right? So, they just switch the names and and think, okay, well, it's not Catholic because it's a crystal, not a crucifix. You know what I mean? But what they're doing is they're replacing the holy artifacts like relics and crucifixes and rosaries that we keep for protection. And they say, oh, that's hooey. None of that's true. Hey, but I have a rock, and this rock is powerful, right? And listen, I love my crystals too. They're beautiful. But, New Age, again, is a really watered down version of Catholicism. And it's funny because they often laugh at Catholics or judge them, especially as we talk about exorcists. But every New Ager I know is constantly under spiritual attack. So it's like, see, we have a guy for that. You're on your own, So Catholicism protects you. So my attitude was, because I had left the church during the scandals, which I recognize now as a failure on my part. I should have stayed and fought within the church, right, to help the reformation of it or the cleaning up of it. And instead, I was just so upset I left. And that's a failure on my part. That's not something I'm proud of. That's a failure on my part. And I started to study everything. So I studied other Christian denominations. Didn't quite do it for me. I got into New Age for a long time, but then I found everybody's so weak. Every New Ager I've ever met is very, very emotionally and mentally weak. So it's like, I don't want that at all. And then I found the occult. I found a lot of value in the occult, actually. A lot of value. And as a matter of fact, my time studying the occult is what brought me back to God. So I found that a little bit ironic. But, all of these other traditions and new traditions coming forward, occult traditions, all of them are trying to fill the space of spirituality because we are spiritual beings. As Russell Brand said a few weeks ago, we are hardwired to worship. You're going to worship something. So if it's not going to be your religion, you will find something else to worship. And if it's not going to be a different God, then it's going to be something secular. You'll start to worship your job, right? And listen, work is not intrinsically a bad thing. It's a beautiful thing. But when you worship it, it'll ruin your family, right? Because then you'll all be all about the career and you'll forget your family. You'll forget everything else. That was what I fell into. I left the church for 23 years and became a workaholic. And all my energy went into my career, which was a very big mistake. I missed out on a lot of things. I've sacrificed a lot of things in my life to give to a job that ultimately wasn't always there for me. Because then I lost that job anyway, right? So I went on to other things and I ended up successful anyway. But that was a big lesson for me. So life is hard. Believe me, life was harder without Catholicism than it was with Catholicism. When I think about when I left the church, I thought I would feel this liberation, right? And instead what I felt was a void and a silence. And I stopped paying attention to myself. Not that I lost a moral compass at all. I'm a very moral person intrinsically. However, I stopped paying attention to my day-to-day behavior in the sense that food got out of hand and I became obese and then now have health issues from the obesity. Worshiping my job all those years fried my thyroid. Overworking fried my thyroid, so now I have health issues from that. So, it had a negative impact on my life. Socially, huge negative. Workaholism made me an isolated human being that only socialized with clients. It was the only time I was doing anything as if it was work-related socially. So it really, really threw my life out of balance in horrible ways. And then I also felt the void of the lack of the mysticism. I missed that desperately. I missed the structure. And I missed the feeling of connectedness. I missed weird coincidences and synchronicities happening that reminded me we weren't alone in the world. And then when these things did happen that I couldn't ignore, all it did was leave me confused and missing things. And that was not a fun place to be. So for me, having lived most of my life as a very devout Catholic and then a good 23 years in the middle as a heathen, right? I've learned that life is way harder without Catholicism, way harder. And my days are so much more fulfilled. They are filled with deeper meaning. They are filled with connection. They are filled with introspection and self-analyzing and changing of outward behavior to reflect something I'm trying to yearn towards, which has only made me a better professional, a better wife, a better person, a better friend. It's only done good for me. So no, Catholicism isn't hard. Life without it is hard.